Sukkos, everybody knows we've spoken in the past about how in Sukkos we're surrounded by the schach. The sukkah is essentially the schach that defines the sukkah. So it could be any sort of, the walls of the sukkah could be any sort of material. The schach is what makes the sukkah. That's the part that has to be that we have to be makbid on. And then you have the daled binim that we take with us into the sukkah. Take the four pieces into the sukkah. So the daled binim, schach, the common denominator between all of them is that they were all things that were once growing. So obviously you can't take a tree with you. You can't take a tree with you. That's the next best thing we could do. They're no longer growing. But we mentioned in past years how obviously the message of Sukkos is that a person is meant, after all the commitments that we make, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we promise Hashem everything on intense Elul, and then after all of that, what we want to do is we need a reminder, whether conscious or subconscious, we have a reminder for the course of the year that we are committed to grow. These were things that grew, and therefore our commitment for the course of the year is that as Jews, we are going to grow. Now, there was once a kid, a bunch of little kids were having a contest climbing a pole. Who could climb the pole fastest? And they kept climbing the pole. One kid kept winning. Time after time, one kid kept winning. And there was a little old man was watching them. And this kid, time after time, the kid kept winning. So the old man said to the kid, at a certain point, after they all finished, after they all finished, the old man said to the kid, I was watching you, and I could tell you why you kept winning. I was watching what happened. I noticed that all the other kids, as they climbed the pole, the higher they got, they started looking downwards. And when they looked downwards, got a little nervous at their height, so they slowed down. You kept your focus directly upwards, and because you kept your focus directly upwards, so you kept climbing, you kept winning. So the little boy was the Sfas Emes, and the little old man was his grandfather, the Chedush Arim Zatzal. And the Sfas Emes, the Chedush Arim was telling the Sfas Emes that the key to growth in life is a person has to look over. Be focused upwards, always look upwards. You focus upwards, look upwards, and continue your growth. There was a massive Talmud Chacham. We used to be a Rabbi here in North Samach, Moshe Karbach, should have a refuah shlema. So Moshe has written Svarim on Rabbi Akiva Eger. He's written Svarim on Rabbi Akiva Eger. Massive Talmud Chacham. So he was once talking, I was waiting to speak to him, and I had his notebook was on the table. He had a loose leaf notebook with his notes on Rabbi Akiva Eger. And so he was talking to somebody. While he was talking to him, I started glancing through his notebook. And I'm looking through, most of it I didn't understand because it was on Rabbi Akiva Eger. And most of it, I'm glancing through his notebook, and all of a sudden the last page, on the back page, he's got a picture. In the notebook, there's a piece of paper, it's got a picture on it. It's one of those giant California redwoods, a sequoia tree. Those sequoia, those giant trees that they actually drill out a way for cars to drive through. These are humongous trees. I think they grow 300 feet high, something like that. They're wide, they're tall, and the picture was a picture of a sequoia tree, somebody who had taken it from the ground upwards. So you're looking at an upwards picture of the sequoia tree. So this is in his notebook on Rabbi Akiva Eger. So I said to him, what's this? So he smiled, he looked at me and says, just a reminder, you always got to grow. You always have to grow. That is what Sukkos is about. That's what the message of Sukkos. That's why there's no coincidence that comes after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when we've made all our commitments and we've taken on, and we said we're going to do this and we're going to learn a certain amount, we're going to be nice, and so on and so forth. When the Torah says in Parshas Bo, when the Torah says about the mitzvah of putting the blood on the doorposts, so the Torah says, V'lokchu min hadam, you take the blood from the Korban Pesach, v'nosnu al shtei mezuzos v'al mashkof. You put it on the two mezuzos, which are the doorposts. V'al mashkof, the mashkof is the crossbeam, what we call the lintel. You put the blood on the two mezuzos, and you put it on the crossbeam on the lintel. That's what the Torah says in Pasuk Zayin. Then, 15 psukim later in Pasuk Chav Beis, the Torah says you should dip it in the blood, V'higatem el hamashkof ve'el shtei mezuzos. You should reach the mashkof and the two mezuzos. The Torah reverses the order. The first time the Torah says the two mezuzos, the two doorposts, and the cross beam, the lintel. And the second time the Torah says, reach to the lintel and the two mezuzahs. So one of them, unfortunately, I think Rav Gedalia shores itself, if I'm not mistaken. He says like this: there's a medrash in the Tana Devei Eliyahu. In the Tana Devei Eliyahu, this is an interesting medrash. It's a medrash that comes, this is a very, very interesting medrash. Gemara says that Tana Devei Eliyahu was taught by Eliyahu HaNavi himself. So we are holding in our hands right here a text which was dictated by Rabbi Eliyahu HaNavi. The Gemara in Ksubah says that he taught to Rav Anon, he taught him this text of Tana Devei Eliyahu. So what Eliyahu HaNavi says is worth listening to. Eliyahu HaNavi. So HaNavi says like this, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose Klal Yisrael, and it says regarding Klal Yisrael, V'kol kach lama. He spoke to Klal Yisrael the way a person speaks with a friend. HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to us face to face. Says the Medrash, V'kol kach lama. Why did he develop this relationship with Klal Yisrael? Ela bishvil ha'ahava, shuhu oivosam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. Sometimes people go into Yom Kippur, and people just have this attitude of, I'm cooked. Right? Now, Kodesh Baruch Hu just with the pitchfork, they're just waiting with the gates of purgatory to get us. It's not like that, not at all. He loves us. Ubishvil ha-simcha shu misamech, when Kodesh Baruch Hu rejoices in us. Completely different than a lot of people's approach to Yiddishkeit. Very unhealthy approach. This is much healthier. L'cheinu midaber imam b'loshon yochid v'loshon rabim. Leficha chayisi omer, says Eliyahu HaNavi, shekol echad ve'echad miYisrael, every single Jew. He doesn't say every single Talmid Chacham in Bnei Brak, and he doesn't say every single Talmid Chacham learning in Brisk. He says every single Jew. That includes people learning in other yeshivas as well, and even people in Or Sameach. Includes us all. Every one of us, maybe especially us, Chayiv Lomar, must say, people ask, where is Or Sameach? Sometimes people say, well, it's just 7 minutes from Mir. Right, it's 7 minutes from Mir. I guess you got it wrong, Rabbosai. In Shemayim, they say, where's Mir? Oh, Mir? It's about 7 minutes from Or Sameach, right? We don't know which base of Medrash. We don't know which base of Medrash is worth more. So he says, Masai yagiu maisai lemaisei avosai. Every Jew has to say, when will my actions reach the actions of my fathers, Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov? Shelo kanu ha'avos ha'olam hazeh ve'olam haba, v'mos ben David, the avos ha'kedoshim. Why were they given olam hazeh? They had wealth, honor, everything a man could want. They get olam haba. They get Yemos David, which is the Mashiach. Ela bishvil ma'aseim atovim v'Talmud Torah. They're good deeds and they're learning Torah. So every one of us has to say, Masai yagiu maisai l'maisai v'zeh. When will I reach the level of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? So the truth of the matter is like this. When we go back to the Parsha, the Chumash, why does it say the first time the mezuzahs and then the lintel? The second time it says to reach the lintel and then the mezuzahs. The answer is that those two mezuzahs, by the Korban Pesach, when they put the blood on, the two mezuzahs represent Yaakov and Yitzchak. And the crossbeam, the lintel, represents Avram Avinu. That's what the Medrash says. The two mezuzahs are Yitzchak and Yaakov, and the one all the way at the top is Avram Avinu. So a person has to know that in our development, we have to develop one step at a time. The mezuzahs, Avram, Yaakov and Yitzchak, and get all the way up to Avram Avinu. Reach it, put it on the mezuzahs first, and then get all the way up to the crossbeam. But when it comes to reach, what should our ultimate goal be? The ultimate goal is to reach Avram Avinu, all the way up on top of that crossbeam. The second time the Torah says, that's why the Torah uses the lashon the second time, the higiu, they should reach it to that crossbeam. Vihigatem el hamashkof, reach that crossbeam, because the ultimate goal is to reach all the way up. Keep the goals high, keep focused on growth. Be the Sfas Emes. I don't say you'll write a parish like the Sfas Emes, but each one of us is capable of fulfilling our potential, but we have to stay focused upward. Keep looking upwards. Never feel, and I better slow down. Don't slow down. I mean, you have to have some guidance. You don't want You don't want to become a walking disaster, but you slow down, meaning in your guided growth, be willing to grow. So when you go to the Yovos HaKadoshim, Mosai Yagiu, so what do we have to reach? So we have to Torah, Avoda, and Gemilus Chasadim. That's what we're looking to arrive. We're striving for the level of Torah, Avoda, and Gemilus Chasadim. In the Panovich Yeshiva, there was a bacher that when it came to, this bacher had been engaged and somehow the engagement was broken off. The bacher was very depressed. And one day Rav Shach Zatzal, who was the leader of Lithuanian Torah Jewry, and Rav Shach walks into the Beis Medrash and he says, does anybody know where Ruvain is? Name of the bacher, whatever his name, we call him Ruvain. Does anybody know where Ruvain is? I need somebody to tell me where I could find a certain statement from Rabbi Akiva Eiger. So everybody went calling, looking for Ruvain. Now you should know that Rav Shach knew Rabbi Akiva Eiger's. I was going to say like we know Ashrei, but halavai, we should know Ashrei like Rabbi Shach knew Rabbi Akiva Eiger. So certainly like we know the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. So everybody went. They went and called Ruvain, and Rav Shach said, Ruvain, where does Rabbi Akiva Eiger say this? Ruvain says to him, I think it's in, in a Chelek Baba Basra or whatever. Okay. And there's a tumult in the yeshiva. The whole yeshiva hears Rav Shach asked the bacher to ask Ruvain, where's Rabbi Akiva Eiger? Word got out, and then potential father-in-laws heard there's a bacher in Panovich where Rav Shach is asking for Mara Makolos from. Remember, 2 weeks later he was engaged. 2 weeks later. So they asked Rav Shach, what was that all about? Rav Shach said, look, I didn't realize that was what would happen. I felt the bacher was low. The bacher was a little depressed. He was upset about what happened. I figured I'd cheer him up, let him get a little bit of cover, let people know that, the Rosh Hashiva was asking him where the Rebbe Akiva Eiger is. So when I say Masai, and then it had the ripple effects of the father-in-law who ended up, taking the bacher as a son-in-law. And I'll add my own part of the story. I don't know if it's true or not. We'll say the father was extremely, extremely rich, and he only had one daughter, and the father was 97 on a respirator. All right, we'll make it a happy story while we're at it. So so Rav Shach goes, and Rav Shach, where did Rav Shach get this from? Mosai yagiu maaseh lemaaseh avosai. A person understands the first Avram Avinu, our first of the Avos, is Chesed. We have to try to figure out where do we have opportunities in our life to do chesed. You know that they gave an award. There's a man in Australia, true story, it was documented a couple of years ago. A man in Australia had a company and he retired and he bought himself a nice seaside home overlooking the sea, and he retired and he was sitting there. This is his dream retirement home. So his first morning there, his wife sits down to breakfast. He's got this beautiful bay window overlooking the sea. And all of a sudden he sees some guy walk past, and he sees him right on the cliff overlooking the window, and the guy jumps off the cliff. The guy committed suicide right in front of him. The guy was absolutely horrified. So it turned out, okay, what can you do? They called the police. The next day he sees another guy coming walking past. It turned out this was the single most popular suicide spot in Australia. Right? Now, how a suicide spot becomes popular, I'm not sure. It's like somebody can come back and say, hey, this is a great place. I'll tell you, I like this much better than the last place. This was really good. So I don't know exactly how a suicide spot becomes popular. But he came across, so the second day, he sees the guy, he runs out and he grabs the guy and brings him into the house. Sits the guy down, starts talking to him, and he turned out in the course of the year, he prevented 40 suicides. And he got an award from the Australian government. He was the biggest suicide preventer in the country. He got the award. And they said to him, what's the secret of your success? How did you do it? So he said, 2 listening ears and a kettle of tea. Masai yagiu maaseh lemaaseh avosai. You have an Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was the pillar of chesed in the world. People are always looking, where can I do chesed? Where is there opportunity to do chesed? There are countless opportunities in life to do chesed. And if a person thinks that I should do chesed, I should be the suicide preventer, I could be like Avram Avinu. Each person, especially in a yeshiva situation, you live in a community, there are always people. You could be the guy who stacks the sidurim in shul. Instead of being the guy who yells at the gabbai, you could be the guy who helps the gabbai put away the sidurim. You could be the person who compliments the Baal Tefillah instead of the guy criticizing how long the Baal Tefillah took. You could be the person who's encouraging people. That's Masai Yagiu Maaseh L'Maaseh Avosai. The Torah says Basya Bas Paro goes down to the river to rescue Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, if you've learned this, gentlemen, Rabbi say we've all learned this, and that there should be a question that should jump off the page. Everybody knows the Medrash Basi Basparo goes down to the river, and she reaches out her arm, and her arm stretched. Right? It stretched as machlokas in the Gemara, exactly how far it stretched was a certain amount, it's 60 amos, how far, but the arm stretched. Okay, very impressive. And she pulls in, what do you call it? She's rewarded, and she becomes one of the people who never dies death as we understand it. She goes into Gan Eden alive, whatever exactly that means. But there's a glaring question you should be wondering. What was going through Basya Bas Paro's head? She didn't know the Medrash. She didn't know that her arm was going to stretch. If I would stand here and I would say, ooh, that clock over there on the wall is off, I have to adjust the clock. And I would reach out my arm like this. Now, one of two things will happen. Either I'll go like that, nothing will happen. Then you'll all start looking at each other and say, I think we got to talk to the people here, you got an issue with Kaplan. The alternative is that I'll do it and my arm will stretch all the way across and reach the clock. In which case, again, there will be one of two reactions. Reaction number one is you will all reach for your wallets and make sure they're firmly in your pockets so I can't reach them, number one. Number two, you will then wonder, okay, that's very impressive, but how did I know that my arm was going to reach out? I have to say it in public, I've never been able to do it before. And my arm has never stretched, right? I admitted it. My arm has never stretched. Now if I'm reaching my arm out, how do you know that my arm, how did I know that what was her havamina, as they say? Basi Baspara is very impressive, and then we have a medrash that says it stretched. But when she reached out originally, it didn't stretch. So what happened? You know what the answer is? The answer is she tried. She tried. You have an opportunity to do a chesed. You have an opportunity to try. Are you going to be successful? You won't be successful? Try. Ooh, look at the siyata d'shmaya that she gets. Look at the divine assistant Basi Baspara gets. She makes the effort, and her arm stretches out. I had a guy once in my neighborhood that I walked out. It was a boiling hot Friday afternoon, and they have, the big green garbage dumpsters that they have in Eretz Yisrael. I'm very well aware of them now because there's one of the dumpsters that I now know what time the city collectors come to change them. It's at 6:30 in the morning. I know that well because I heard them in my sukkah every day of Chol Hamoed. I was not planning on waking up at 6:30 every morning, but it's very difficult when they're dropping huge metal dumpsters and complementing each other in the process. And so, I walked out, it was a boiling hot Friday, and I walked out to I had a big bag of garbage, I was taking it to put in the dumpster. When I got to the dumpster at the corner, so I saw a neighbor of mine, a guy lived across the street. He was halfway up and into the dumpster reaching for something. The dumpster is off the ground, his feet were actually off the ground, and he was leaning over on the edge, and he was reaching in. So, of course, being diabolically witty, as I got to him, I just said, do you need help getting in? Right? But he didn't appreciate the humor. And then I watched him, and he reaches and he pulls out an empty cardboard box. He takes his cardboard box, he crushes it up, and he throws it in. Then he jumps up again. And again, he goes fishing for a cardboard box. Far be it for me to judge other people's hobbies, but I've never seen anybody do this before. And he reaches in, he fishes in, takes out another cardboard box, he crushes it, throws in, jumps up again, breathes out another one. So finally I said to him, what are you doing? So he looked at me, he said, maybe you haven't heard. Motzei Shabbos, this was on Friday. He said, Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, there's going to be a municipal strike. They're not going to be collecting the garbage. I want to make sure to try and make as much room in the garbage dumpster as possible to crush the carton so that all the neighbors on the block shouldn't be inconvenienced when they come to throw the garbage, shouldn't accumulate. So, and I remember thinking to myself, right. Yeah. Now here he was doing it. Not only I wasn't doing it, I didn't even know what he was doing when he was doing it. So sometimes people say, well, I would like to also be like Avram Avinu. I'd also like to do chesed. Where are there opportunities? A person is looking for opportunities. A person could easily fulfill the dictum of Masai Yagiu Maisa, the Maisa Losai. Number one. Number two, there's another area in our striving, and I think that we are often derelict in. Not our fault, and I think that Bali Tshuva are generally less to be blamed than others, but we have to know that there's something called halacha, and halacha has to be fulfilled to the letter of the law. And sometimes people take liberties with halacha. Well, I'm not sure which bracha to make, so I'll just make a bori priha food, and hopefully they'll take care of everything. You know, I'm not sure. There's a shinui makob. You know, did I leave the place? I didn't leave the place. I say you put 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, and then jump in, jump out. You know, we make all sorts of you got hilchos brachos. You got all sorts of areas of halacha. The lulav, the esrog. Here, this is the classic example. Grown men standing around for 3 days looking at a spot on an esrog. Is it brown or is it black? Right? If it's brown, it's kosher. If it's black, it's pasul. And you're looking with a magnifying glass at a piece of fruit to see is the spot brown or black. And then you got the people who, I'm sure this happened to you when you were buying esrog. There's always somebody in the room who you're looking. What a beautiful esrog. And then the guy just takes a look over your shoulder and says, yeah, but there's a spot right over there. A spot that can't be seen with the most sophisticated scientific microscopes. This guy can see it from 3 feet away. Right over there, there's a black dot. As I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I still don't see any black. It's almost any black dot. So what happens is there's halacha. Now, there are, when you were growing up, I'm sure that you had somebody on your block who was there's always a kid on the block who was called, he's accident prone. Right? There's always some kid who's accident, but he's always the kid who's walking around with either a splint, or he's got stitches, or he's got crutches. It's the same kid, always over and over. He's accident prone. So the truth of the matter, he wasn't accident prone. He was v'ildachaya, because if he wouldn't jump from table to table and he wouldn't swing from chandelier to chandelier, people who were sitting in the library or sitting in the base medrash learning Baba Kama somehow never are accident, never limping. Okay, Baba Basra is heavy, but nobody limps with the Baba Basra. That's the kid who's accident prone. In my experience, there are certain people who are what we'll call halachically accident prone. They're always ending up in a situation where, for some reason or other, they just seem to have gotten themselves into a pickle. You always get these stories about people who on Erev Shabbos were stuck in a blizzard in upstate New York. This is always upstate New York, it's always a blizzard, Erev Shabbos. But what they don't tell you is that they just left Flatbush to get to Muncie 7 minutes before Shabbos. So you didn't quite leave enough time over there in order to make the trip. So it's one thing if you left on Thursday night and you didn't travel after Chatzos and Erev Shabbos and you went to you did everything responsibly. Okay, it happens. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes moves people around. Sometimes people find themselves in a situation where they're completely wrong. A guy forgot Yalav V'Yovu and Shemon Esrei. It happens. You forget Yalav V'Yovu, Chol HaMoed. It could happen. You forget. Even halacha says, what if you forget Yalav V'Yovu and Shemon Esrei? But not that you should forget it 4 times in a row. Sometimes you got a guy who's davening Shemon Esrei all day long. He goes from Shachris to Mincha because he still hasn't said Yalav V'Yovu. It's after Shkia, buddy. Now which tefillah are you davening here? So sometimes if a person it's a lack. What happens is it's a lack of conscientiousness. I'll tell you a frightening story. There was in the chief rabbinate of Israel, they publish a list. The chief rabbinate, whenever there are engagements in the country, so they publish a list of who got engaged, and they publicize this list. So the couple got engaged, apparently a traditional Sephardi couple, and one of the dayanim, one of the judges from the Rabbanot, is sitting in the office, and he gets a phone call the next day after they publish the list, and he gets a guy, hi, I saw the name of a young lady on your list, she's engaged, she can't get married, she's my wife. So the dayan says, listen, that's a very severe thing to say. If you have something to say, come down to the office and let's discuss it. You can't just go and spread a rumor. That's a terrible, horrible thing. The guy says, okay, comes down to the office, says, that young lady, he says that Mazal Cohen, whatever her name was, she, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, we were at a party, a bunch of friends, not observant, but a bunch of traditional Jews were at a party. And I took a cracker, and in front of 2 witnesses, I said, Harayat Mekudeshes Li, and I gave her the cracker, because I betrothed her with the cracker. So, and the 2 witnesses there, and I gave her the cracker. So they didn't know what to do. They brought in Rav Elyashiv at the time. Rav Elyashiv Zatzal was one of the dayanim on the Rabbanot. They brought in Rav Elyashiv, and they went down to the factory to determine whether or not the cracker was a shava pruta. When the factory manufactures it, they sell the retail price on the wholesale price on the cracker. That was what hinged her status of being married or single, hinged on the price of a cracker. And then they went down there and they were very happy to discover that the cracker was not worth a shava pruta. But then one of the dayanim said, hold on a second, because in Israel there's something called mam, which is value-added tax, which is basically everything you do in Israel, including drinking water, breathing air, or anything you do, has value-added tax on it. And with the value-added tax, the cracker was then escalated to over a shava pruta, and then they had to determine whether or not value-added tax is an inherent part of the price that makes the difference. And Rabbi Yashiv brought a proof based on certain Gemaras that it is, and therefore the young lady had to get a get from the original husband in order to be able to marry the second husband. So sometimes a person says, you get a phone call, well, she's my wife, I gave her a cracker. A person who's complacent about halacha can turn around and say, okay, it's just a cracker, they're just playing around, they're just shticking around. Well, what we call shtick, Rabbi Yashiv calls an eishes ish. And therefore a person has to know that when it comes to halacha, sometimes we take liberties with halacha. A person has to know, you can't take liberties. How much food we eat, how much mizonos we eat, is it kviya suda, it's not kviya suda. All these areas of halacha, the person has to know whether it's mosai yagiu maisai the maisai avosai. It's another area called tefillah. We're davening. Oh, are we davening? Right? A lot of davening these days. So it started with Elul, we got with Slichos, and if you're fortunate to be from of Sephardi persuasion, you've been saying Slichos since Rosh Chodesh Elul. We're all jealous. And if that isn't enough, then you got a Rosh Hashanah. Now you go to shul, wow, you're leafing through the pages, you're looking like, whoa, how much longer is this going to go? That's at 8 in the morning after you've been there for 2 hours, and you don't know you got another 6.5 hours left. Whoa. And then after you finish Musaf, there's always, okay, now we're going to daven mincha. Oh, mincha now. Person's wilting from davening. And then we finished with Rosh Hashanah, you got a Yom Kippur. Then you got Sukkos, and there's every morning we've been doing, just wait till tomorrow morning, so Shana Rabbah, that's a lot of fun. You go, what, it's a nice long davening, it's about 2.5 hours worth of davening, in case there's a bit enough. And a person says, you know what, I'm davened out. Sometimes people say, I'm davened out. It's the wrong attitude. It's the wrong attitude. The person has to know that we have an obligation, we have to grow in tefillah. Tefillah is something that we do. We daven every day. Rav Weinbach Zatzal, the Rosh Yeshiva, once said in this Beis Medrash, make a calculation. How many hours a week does your average Jew spend in shul? How many hours a week do you spend in shul? Well, you got Shachris every morning, then you got Mincha, and then you got Mariv, and then you got Shabbos davening. About 15 hours a week you're in shul. You're there anyway. Isn't it worth thinking about what you're saying? You're not going anywhere. And to the contrary, the more you focus, the more you concentrate on it, the more you enjoy the tefillah, the more you taste the davening. So if Yitzchak Avinu is the Amud HaTfilah, Yitzchak Avinu is Gvura Din, Yitzchak Avinu is the davener, Avoda. So Ad Mosai Yagiu Maisei L'Maisei Avosai. Person has to know I have a friend who traveled from Eretz Yisrael. He got to a certain country, and he was exhausted at the end of the trip. He was exhausted. He came to the house, and he went to sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night because he had a dream that he didn't daven Mariv, which was true. He was dreaming that he hadn't daven Mariv. I like that. That's quite a dream. A big schus. That's right. That means that he cared. Right? A lot of people, the last thing they'll dream about is, to the contrary, I dreamt that I daven Mariv. Now that's good enough for me. Why ruin it? Why? And I dreamt I probably had more kavanah in my dream than I did when I was there with the sitter in front of me. Person dreamt that he davened Mariv. I just heard recently, by the way, somebody said, I don't know if it's true or not, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, they spread the story, and they don't, like Chafetz Chaim, they don't tell stories about this like you and me, but they said Reb Chaim Kanievsky dreamt the entire Maseches Brachas. The entire tractate Brachas, he dreamt it. He learned Maseches Brachas in his dream. And then he wanted to know, then there was a shayla, should he make a siyum on it? So the obvious answer is dream the siyum, but here's a man he woke up because he dreamt that he hadn't daven Mariv. You know why? Because he's concerned that he hadn't daven Mariv. If you're concerned about it, something that's bothering you, person is zocheh to such a thing because davening means something to him. They had the short cover Rebbe. I don't know if you ever heard of the short cover Rebbe. Was the Rebbe of Reb Meir Shapiro of Lublin. Reb Meir Shapiro, the famous Daf Yomi, Reb Meir Shapiro. So his Rebbe was the short cover Rebbe. He was an Adam Gadol, tremendous Talmid Chacham and Tzaddik, and he was the Rebbe of Reb Meir Shapiro. And the short cover Rebbe obviously lived in a city called Shortkov. And one day, a Karliner Chassid showed up, middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, he shows up in Shortkov. He's traveling on business. He comes to the Rebbe. The Karliner Chassidim have a minhag when they daven. I don't know if you've ever been to the Karliner Beis Medrash. The Karliner Chassidim, they daven very loud. They yell the davening. So this Kalidei Chassid comes to the chart cover Rebbe. He says, Rebbe, I'm going to be here for Shabbos in your base medrash. Is it okay if I yell the davening? So the Rebbe says, you may not yell the davening. Yelling is not davening, and you are not welcome to yell in our base medrash. If you insist on yelling, you'll have to find another place to daven. In our shtibel, nobody yells. Okay, he asks the Rebbe, what can he do? Lel Shabbos, he comes to the base medrash. He's sitting on his hands on his best behavior. Daven's very dry for him, a very dry l'chun Aranina, Kabbalah Shabbos. What can he do? The Rebbe said no. Shabbos morning, he gets to the base medrash, and again, he's on his best behavior, and he's davening. At a certain point, he gets to Nishmas, and also he says, Nishmas Kochai Tevarech Hashem. He looks around, everybody's looking at the guy. Also, he comes to the Rebbe, he's terribly embarrassed. He comes to the Rebbe after davening, says to the Rebbe, please forgive me. I know I asked you if I could yell. Forgive me that I yelled during davening. So the Rebbe looks at him, he says, perfectly okay. David HaMelech says there are 10 lishonos of tefillah. There are 10 expressions to describe prayer. And one of them is called sa'aka, yelling. So it's perfectly okay. Says, Rebbe, I don't understand. I asked you if I could yell. You said no. Now I yelled. Now you're telling me that's lashon sa'aka. He says, my friend, when a Jew comes to me on a Tuesday and he tells me, by the way, Shabbos I plan on yelling, that's not davening, that's yelling. But when a Jew is davening and spontaneously there's hishtapchus alev, spontaneously the energy overflows from his neshama is connecting, and he bursts out with a yell, that's real davening. He says, that's perfectly okay. The person understands, we ourselves, we daven so much, we spend so much time on tefillah. And Mosai Yagiu Maisei L'Maisei Avosai. We have to work on tefillah. We have to focus on chesed, focus on tefillah. Try to reach the level, the elevated levels of the avos. They had, I'll tell you a beautiful story, just so you should know what tefillah is. Rav Führer, Elimelech Führer, runs a medical organization here in Eretz Yisrael. So he was once at the Kaisel with a very wealthy man. I guess he was trying to soften him up for a donation for the organization. And he was at the Kaisel, at the Western Wall, and they saw a Jew crying. A Jew was davening there, a Jew standing at the way of the Kaisel crying. So Rav Führer said to this wealthy man, look, if a Jew's crying so profusely, it's one of two things. Either there's a health issue in the family, or there's a financial issue in the family. I'll make you a deal. If it's a health issue, I'll take care of it. I'm a medical referral expert. If it's a financial issue, you take care of it. So sometimes wealthy men like challenges, like, when you got money, let's at least play a game with it. Let's gamble a little. So if Führer walks over to the man, he says, hi, my name is Führer. Do you have any problems, any medical problems, you or anybody in your family? I could help you out. He says, no, nothing drastic, just a few Jewish problems, an ingrown toenail or two, nothing drastic. He goes back to the wealthy man. He says, okay, you're up. So the wealthy man puts his arm around his shoulder. He says, my friend, just name what you want. Here's a blank check. Just write. I'll write in the sum. Anything you want. He says, no, Baruch Hashem, we don't, we're not rich, but we don't have, Baruch Hashem, we have what we need. So Führer says to him, so why were you crying like that? Crying so profusely? You must have a problem. He says, I'll tell you the truth. I have 12 children. And last night, I marry off children, so a lot of challenges. You got in-laws, and you got the girl or the son-in-law, and you got the in-laws, and then you got financial expenses, and you got the in-laws, and you got all sorts of arrangements, and you got the in-laws. It's not easy. It's not easy marrying off kids. So he says, every time we've married off one of our children, I've come to the Kaisel and I've asked, please Hashem, help me. And Baruch Hashem, Kodesh Baruch Hu's helped. He's responded. Last night we married off our 12th and final child. So I just came to the Kaisel to say thank you. I'm not allowed to say thank you. So I was crying, tears of gratitude to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Sometimes the person hears, oh yeah, right, we're allowed to do that too. That's right, I forgot about that. We're allowed to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're allowed to focus on the good in our life. Everybody has things they need. Everybody has things that they feel that they're incomplete in the physical or ruchni realm. We all have needs. But you could also turn around and say, thank you very much. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for what you've given me, whether it's health, finances, whatever it is. That's what tefillah is. They had a Rav went to France once. I can't get over this story. There was a Rav was traveling. He was in France. And he walks into a shul. And he sees a Jew davening. And the Jew is davening. He looks like he's on a jungle gym. And the Jew is all over the place with the davening. He's shaking and he's moving around. And the Rav is watching him. He's mesmerized by his devotions. So after the davening, he calls the Jew over. He says, "Hi, I couldn't help but I was curious. There's a lot of activity there, a lot of movement while you were davening. What was that all about?" So the Jew says to him, "I'll tell you. I'm a very simple Jew. I'm very unsophisticated. But I remember I was a little boy, and my mother once called me into the kitchen, and she said to me, 'Herschel, I want you to watch something.' She filled up a jug of water, and she put it on the table. She filled the jug all the way to the top. And she took the table and she shook the table, and the water spilled over. And she said, 'Herschel, I want to tell you something, and never forget it. That jug represents the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a kel molei rachamim. He is a God who is full of mercy. All our job in life is figure out to tip it over a little bit, have some of that mercy spill over.' So he said, 'Rabbi, look, davening's complicated, a little too sophisticated for you. I figure I'm not going to get it through concentration. Maybe if I move around, some of that mercy will spill over.' So for us, we understand moving around is not the essential in davening, but certainly that a person should focus on, we're doing it, we always do it, but there's never a point where you become complacent. A person always has to realize we could always grow more. Last point, Talmud Torah. When it comes to learning Torah, there's never a point where a person could say, 'I'm done.' Talmud Torah, learning Torah, a person always has to grow, try to emulate Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was such a masmid. 14 years in a Beis Medrash, is on a 14-year JLE program. 14 years in the Beis Medrash. Medrash says he never laid down to go to sleep. He put his head on the shtender, took a shtender nap. But he never laid down to go to sleep. 14 years in a Beis Medrash. Person learns Torah, we understand that Torah is our lifeblood. And a person understands we could always grow and improve in our devotion in Talmud Torah. So the upshot of it all is a medrash, and I want to conclude with this medrash. It's a remarkable medrash. The medrash says like this. The medrash says that when it says, Ki amru kulanu mesim, the Egyptians wanted the Jewish people out. Makas bechoros, the plague of the firstborn. So we're all dying. So the Medrash asks the question, what do you mean we're all dying? Moshe said, Umeis kol bechor. Only the firstborns are going to die. And the Egyptians thought that if you had 4 or 5 children, only the firstborn would die. But they were all dying, says the Medrash. They didn't know that the Egyptian women were immoral. And each one of those children in the house, who the father thought were his children, each one was a firstborn of a different man. Because the Egyptian women were immoral. And then listen to what the words of the Medrash said. The Medrash says like this. V'arei dvarim kal v'chomer. Kal v'chomer. If, when it comes to punishment, embarrassment, something negative, somebody who does something in secret, in private, hamoko mefarsimo b'goli HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals it openly, kal v'chomer lemidas hatova meruba. When it comes to good things, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays back, and he pays back at a higher rate than for the negative. A person does a chesed, and you think nobody will ever know about it. A person works on his davening, you think nobody's ever going to know about it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, one day it's going to become well known. If a bunch of immoral Egyptian women, their behavior is exposed publicly, then certainly a person sits in a Beis Medrash and learns, sits in a sukkah and he learns. A person's learning Torah. Eventually that's going to be exposed publicly, because Bida Tova Meruba. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman Zatzal was once traveling. The great Rabbi Chanan Wasserman came from the Baranovich Yeshiva to the United States. He had a friend who had left Baranovich years earlier. He knew Rabbi Chanan when he was a little boy. They were in Cheder together. His friend eventually left Baranovich, went to the United States, and apparently opened up a very successful fabric factory. Rabbi Chanan came to the United States, and he goes down to the factory. He meets up with his friend. He goes into his factory. He goes into the office. He meets up with his friend, who's a wealthy man, and he says to his friend, they start schmoozing, reminiscing. The man says to him after a few minutes, he says, okay, Rabbi Wasserman, what did you come for? And Rabbi Chanan holds up his frock, and he turns and he shows on the frock there are normally 2 buttons. He says, I'm missing a button. I came to have a button sewed onto my frock.
So the man starts laughing. He says, very funny. Okay, that says, Rabbi Wasserman, what did you come for? And Rabbi Chanan looks at him. Rabbi Chanan was not a person who smiled easily. He said, I came to have a button sewed onto my frock. So the man says, Rabbi Wasserman, let me show you something. He takes him down into the factory area from the office. They go down a floor. He's got a factory, 200 workers are sitting there making garments. He says, Rabbi Chanan, all of this is mine. Now I'm asking you, what did you come for? Rabbi Chanan says, I came to have a button sewed onto my frock. So he says, all right, I'll teach him a lesson. He calls it, hey, Murphy, come here. Murphy comes over. He says, sew a button on the rabbi's frock. Sews on a button. Rabbi Chanan says, thank you very much. And he turns around with his host and then go home. The guy gets a phone call at night. He calls Rabbi Chanan late at night. He says, Rabbi Wasserman, I can't fall asleep. Why did you come to my office? He says, to have a button sewed onto my frock. And he hangs up the phone. The next morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. Rabbi Wasserman, you cost me a night's sleep. Now, what did you come here for? So Rabbi Chanan goes down to the office. He says to the man, I don't understand your problem. You asked me what I came for. I told you I came to have a button sewed on my frock. I came from Baranovich in Europe. I came to the United States, a couple thousand miles, to have a button sewed onto my frock. That you can't believe. Yet your neshama, your soul, came down from 7 heavens, down to this world, and you're sewing buttons on garments. That's what your neshama came for, that you could believe? The man had a metamorphosis. He became observant, became a supporter of Baranovich Yeshiva. Rabbosai, we're put in this world to grow. We're put in this world to steig. First to know that's the message of Sukkos. Sukkos is a reminder to us. We should all constantly be thinking, keep in mind, Ad Mosai Yagiu Maisai, the Maisai of Osai.